Okay. Kabbalat Shabbat. Receiving Shabbat, right? So the whole thing about Shabbos is that we speak about it as Kabbalat Shabbat, receiving it. Shabbos is coming and we have to receive it, right? So says Reb Shlomo, Ha'olam shelanu kol kach yafeh, we live in such a beautiful world. הייתי רוצה להחזיק את אשתי ואת ילדיי בידיים בליל שישי. I would love to hold, to take my wife and my children with my hands, ולצאת איתם לשדות הקדושים and go out with them to the holy fields כדי לקבל שבת קודש in order to receive the holy Shabbos. So אני רוצה לשתף אתכם בסיפור מדהים. I want to tell you this amazing story. אתם יודעים, לא היו הרבה צדיקים שזכו לתואר קדוש על ידי הצדיקים האחרים. There weren't many tzaddikim that had the merit of being called holy by the other tzaddikim. למרות שכולם היו קדושים, though all of them were holy, אבל היה רבי אחד מאוד מיוחד. There was one very extraordinarily special Rebbe, שכולם קראו לו קדוש. All the other rabbis referred to him as the Holy One. הוא רבנו הקדוש רבי ישראל מרוז'ן. That was the holy visioner. הרוז'נר היה צאצא של מהמגיד ממזריץ'. He was a descendant of the Mizritcher Maggid, וגם צאצא אמיתי של דוד המלך, and he was a true descendant of King David. הוא הצליח להחזיר את המלוכה של הקדוש ברוך הוא ושל דוד המלך. He succeeded in bringing back the kingship of God and King David. אתם יודעים, כל הצדיקים היו תלמידי חכמים, אבל יש מהם שהיו גם מלכים. All the tzaddikim were scholars, but there were amongst them some of them that were like kings. Rabbi Merizhin haya melech. The visioner was like a king. His whole court was conducted in a very royal fashion. Like, you know, he was dressed really, really fancy. If you see any of the rabbis that like the Sadigerer and those who are descendants of the visionary, you'll notice that there's something very stately about them. Like, you know, like they you know, whereas other Hasidic groups downplay like being dressed nicely and so on. By the visionary descendants, they dress very nicely and so on because they, like, you know, descendants of King David. You know? The visionary used to wear very, very fancy shoes, and then one morning after during winter they had gone out to do Kiddush Levana, to do the blessing on the moon. And apparently it was cloudy all night long, and the next morning they found that in the spot that he had been standing waiting to see the moon, there were pieces of flesh from the bottom of his feet that had frozen to the ground and got torn off when he walked away from there. So on the surface, he looked like he was like very fancy, but underneath, at the bottom of the shoes, the soles were torn, and and there was in his privately he was living very, very simply, but just for the sake of kingship, it looked like all fancy. Now, apparently, there's a story I once read that on Sunday afternoon, he would go out for a ride to the forest, and they had some very nice horses that would be hitched up to a very nice wagon, and he'd go out for a ride in the forest. And the story is that this Visnagid, who there was a passage in the Kabbalah that he just couldn't figure out, and as much as he didn't like the idea, but he finally decided that he has to go to some Hasidic master and find out what this passage means. Okay, so he came to Vision, and he was there for Shabbos, and he's like looking at all the opulence, and it's like really turning him off, and so on, this doesn't fit with a holy man to be opulent and everything. And sorry. Apparently, the reason he came to him was because he had read in a sefer that if you can manage for 40 days not to speak or listen to any lashon hara, to any slander, he would achieve some higher spiritual stature. And he did it, but nothing seemed to have changed. Anyway, so he was there for Shabbos, and he's like looking very critically at everything that's going on. And Sunday afternoon, he's watching all the Hasidim stand outside to watch the Rebbe go off for his ride in the forest. And before the Rishner got into the wagon, he went over to one of the horses and sort of patted the horse. At this point, this Misnaga decided he just couldn't control himself anymore. He just ran up to the Rebbe, and he says, "I don't understand what's going on here. All this opulence and everything, and now you even went ahead and you touched an unkosher animal, an animal that's tamei." And the Rebbe looks at him and says, "This horse hasn't spoken Lashon Hara in 40 days." Okay. Anyway, so we actually don't have, I have a collection of this forum from the Rishner. We don't have that many Divrei Torah from him, because apparently he was I don't know, he was very holy. He didn't speak much. And so here's an amazing story about him. Misupar al Rabbeinu had Tzemach Tzedek. So it's told about the Tzemach Tzedek, that was the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, HaKadosh. Hasaba Rabbi Shel HaRabbi Lubavitch, the great-great-grandfather of the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shu Mamash Ratzah Lalechet LeRishon, he really wanted to go and spend the Shabbos with the Rishner. Ki kol hatzadikim hakdoshim hayu holchim l'sham. All the other Rebbes used to go visit the Rishner. Aval hu haya zakein ve'azal kocho, he was already old and he didn't have the strength to travel. Rishon nimtzeit b'Ukraina liad Kiev. Rishon was near Kiev. Lubavitch haya rachok misham, rechoka misham. Lubavitch was far from there. By the way, the English translation of Lubavitch is Philadelphia. Yeah, city of brotherly love. When people come in here and they say they're from Philadelphia, I say, "Oh, you're from Lubavitch," and they look at me like, "What?" But the two names mean literally the same thing.
Lubavitch is a place?
City, yeah. A town. How big it was, I don't know, but. You want to get the door machine? Okay, fine. Shana is getting it. Okay. So what did he do? Let's wait for Shani. Okay. Maybe the two of you could share and give them the cipher. Okay? Give me a second. So what did he do? It says that Ubechain, we're in the 6 lines from the bottom, third word. Ubechain, and so who kara le'echad mechasidav hagdolim, he called one of his big chasidim, Rabbi Isaac Mihamel, and Bikesh Mimeno, he asked him, Ana telech l'Ruzhin, tiyeh sham Shabbat achat, v'tesaper li ma koreh sham. Go to Ruzhin and tell me what it's like there. כולם יודעים שהיו זמנים מיוחדים שבהם היה אסור להיות בחדרו של הרבי מרוז'ין. Everyone knows there were certain special times that nobody was allowed to be in the room with the Rishner. אחד הזמנים הללו היה כמה דקות לפני שבת קודש. One of these times was a few minutes before Shabbos, אבל כשאמרו לרבי מרוז'ין שהגיע שליח מאת הצמח צדק, so when they told the Rishner, page 100, that a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek came, Liyoti Tov Shabbat, came to be with him for Shabbos. Amar lo harabi sheyikanes elav 10 dakot lifnei Shabbat Kodesh. So the Rebbe said, let him know that he should come into his room 10 minutes before Shabbos. Rabbi Isaac Mihamel chashav la'asmo. So the Rabbi Isaac thought to himself, B'vadai hu yeshev b'chumash. Surely I'm going to find him sitting with a chumash. Yilmad parshat hashavua v'yitkonen likrat Shabbat Kodesh. I'm surely going to find him sitting there learning the parsha and getting ready for Shabbos. Aval ze lo haya kacha. That's not the way it was. Hichnisu oto lacheder shel Rishner hakadosh. They brought him into the Rishner's room. V'shenichnas ra'a oto ma'ashen b'makteret. So he sees the Rishner smoking a pipe. Kol hacheder hitmalei ba'ashan. The room was filled with smoke. Harishner milei et kol ha'olam mimaktoret shel hakohen hagadol. So Shlomo says that the Rishner was filling the world with the smoke of the incense offering of the high priest. Higia kvar sha'at knisat Shabbat Kodesh. The time for Shabbos coming in was already arriving. Rabbi Isaac yashav b'sheket v'chashav la'asmo. Rabbi Isaac is sitting there quietly and he's thinking to himself, Kimat Shabbat, Uhu Adayin Ma'ashen, wow, it's almost Shabbos and he's still smoking. But exactly at the second of Shabbos, time of lighting Shabbos candles, he put out his pipe, and he said to his Rabbi Isaac, Bo iti lachalon, come with me to the window, and he will say laharot lecha mashu, I want to show you something. וכולנו עכשיו סגרים את העיניים, so we're all closing our eyes, והולכים איתו לחלון, we're walking with them to the window. הלוואי והייתי זוכה פעם אחת להביא את הילדים שלי לאותו חלון, הלוואי, I would have the merit to at least once bring my children to that window. הראשון הסתכל החוצה, the Rishner looked outside, ואמר לרבי Isaac, and he said to Rabbi Isaac, אתה רואה את העננים של שבת? Do you see the clouds of Shabbos? Somebody coming in?
Yeah.
It was a Shira? Okay. Do you see the Shabbos clouds? Yeah. Hi. Oh, wow. No, she's not. You have her number, yeah? If you don't, I'll give it to you. 0545 331 820. Thank you. So he says, do you see the Shabbos clouds? האם אתה יכול לראות את השמיים של ששת ימי בראשית מפנים מקום לשמיים של שבת? Can you see the sky of the 6 days of the week making space for the sky of Shabbos? אתה מרגיש את הרוח של השבוע מפנה מקום לרוח של שבת? Do you feel the wind of the week making space for the wind of Shabbos? כל העולם של ששת ימי השבוע מפנה מקום לעולם של שבת. The whole world of the 6 days He's making space for the world of Shabbos. Mamash lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nikabla. Let's go and meet the Shabbos bride. Let us go and welcome the Shabbos. Let us go and welcome Shabbos. Rabbi, okay. So Rabbi Isaac Mehamel היה מספר את הסיפור הזה כל חייו. So Rabbi Isaac Hamel would tell this story all the days of his life. והיה אומר, and he would say, פעם אחת זכיתי לראות את שבת קודש. So once in my life, I merited to actually see Shabbos.
I don't understand the story so much.
You don't understand the story. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I think in order to understand the story, you have to have the soul of a poet.
Yeah.
Because this goes beyond the literal. This is between the lines. This is the music of life. This is not getting from A to B. Not point A to point B. That's physics. This is not physics. It's something beyond.
So
it's art.
That's Alicia? No.
Asher.
Asher is saying your friend is Alicia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where is he? You don't know. I just remembered that both of you with an Aleph. That I'm sure you remembered. You know. Before I say anything, anybody else want to say something? You wanted to say something. Okay. Want to say something?
I love the story.
Yeah, great. Kelly, what do you say? So, huh? I didn't hear you.
Oh, wait to hear what's next, the continuation.
Yeah. So, there's a story, it's brought in Siporei Hasidim about, I think it was with the Apter, I'm not sure which Rebbe it was, but some childhood friend of this Rebbe, they both had grown up together, and one of them became a Rebbe, and one of them became a big Rav, and the rabbi's son got engaged to a girl from some other town, and when they set out to go to the wedding, I guess they set out either on Wednesday or Thursday, maybe it was Wednesday. And so the rabbi and a whole entourage of people from his community, like a few wagons of people, set out to go to the town of the Kala. And it was a nice afternoon, and they stopped in the forest to daven. Mincha, and the rabbi was feeling like really happy, and everything was beautiful, and he wanted to spend some extra time davening, so he wandered off from the group deeper into the forest, and he was praying, and everybody was waiting for him. Come sit with me. Everybody was waiting for him to finish davening, but in the meantime, when he finished davening, he wandered further and deeper into the forest, and he got lost. And it was getting dark, and they're looking for him, and they can't find him. So they had no choice. They had to get to the wedding. So they continued on their journey, and despite all the joy, like everybody was quite distressed that the rabbi was lost, the father of the chosim. Anyway, somehow or other, he managed to survive in the forest for a number of days, and he came out at some other distant location, and he found somebody who was able to bring him back to his hometown. Comes back to his hometown, and it's Thursday morning, and comes Thursday morning, and he sees everybody's just going about like their regular weekday work. And he says to his wife, and he says to everybody else, what are you doing? It's Erev Shabbos. It's going to be Shabbos tonight. And they say to him, no, it's Thursday. It's Yom Chamishi. And he says, no, it's not. It's Friday. And he was a very opinionated, adamant person. He says, it's Friday today. It's going to be Shabbos tonight. Start getting ready for Shabbos. And they say to him, no, it's Yom Chamishi. It's Thursday. So he's getting upset, and he goes ahead and starts preparing himself for Shabbos. And comes Thursday night, he davens the Shabbos davening, and he makes Kiddush, and he's upset with everybody, with the whole town, that everybody is desecrating Shabbos. Friday evening, he makes Havdalah, everybody else is making Kiddush, and they're keeping Shabbos in what in his book, in his time, is on Sunday. And this is going on for a couple of weeks, and they realize that obviously something went wrong, and he says, I kept track of time while I was in the forest, and I'm telling you, you are all mistaken. Anyway, nobody could convince him. So they got in touch with his childhood friend, I think it was Dr. Rebbe, and they told him, we've got this real problem. So he says, okay, I'm going to come visit. So he comes and he comes to visit on Thursday, and he meets his friend, the rabbi, and the rabbi says, I've got a real problem here. Everybody's keeping Shabbos on the wrong day, and they're desecrating Shabbos. So the rabbi says to him, well, I came to visit you, and I'm going to keep Shabbos together with you. And he told everybody, tonight, you get dressed for Shabbos, and you'll do your regular davening, but everybody, as far as everybody is concerned, we're going with the rabbi. Don't say anything. And he brought some real strong wine, Anyway, they come to, it's time to daven, and the Rebbe says to his friend, he says, he says to the Rebbe, it would be a big honor if you would lead the services. And the Rebbe says, no, I came to visit you. I would love to hear you lead services. So he's leading the Shabbos services, and everybody else is davening the weekday davening. But the table was set for Shabbos. They sit down at the table. He says, the rabbi says to the Rebbe, so please make Kiddush. He says, no, I want you to make Kiddush. And so he made Kiddush, and he had prepared some really strong wine. And they washed, did the meal, and the Rebbe says, let's say another l'chaim. He gives him another glass of some really strong wine, and another glass of really strong wine, and the rabbi finally falls asleep with his head on the shoulder of the Rebbe, who's sitting next to him. And the Rebbe says to everybody, now go ahead, do whatever you got to do, and make sure you're back here in 24 hours. And 24 hours later, he wakes up, and everybody's keeping Shabbos.
Nice. Nice.
And to the end of his life, he didn't know that that's what had happened. And he was very thankful to the Rebbe that he set everybody straight.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Wow.
Okay. So why am I sharing this story? Because, we know that it's Shabbos because we have our calendar and we're keeping Shabbos, and we're doing all these things we change our clothes, take a shower, get dressed up, prepare special foods, etc., etc. So we know that it's Shabbos, and we feel that it's Shabbos, right? But there is a level, and that's what this story is about. You want to tell her? No. There is a level of Shabbos. In other words, that there is what this story is basically saying here is that there actually is a change in the world, in the universe, when Shabbos comes in, and that is more than just poetry, Shaya. It's there are people who can sense this. There's a story that once one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov went to the big market in Leipzig, and he bought this new watch, like a high tech by the standards of that generation watch. And when he came back to the Baal Shem Tov, he was in his room and he noticed that the clock on the Baal Shem Tov's table was not exactly like his. So he went ahead and he adjusted it. He adjusted the Baal Shem Tov's clock. When the Baal Shem Tov came into the room later, he says, who changed the time? And he says, I did. I bought this really high-tech watch and so on. And so I fixed your clock. So Baal Shem Tov says, no, yours is wrong. And he says, but I just got this new watch, and it's super sophisticated. Baal Shem Tov says, yours is wrong. And so he says, well, how do you know? So he says, because every hour, every minute is a different emanation, manifestation of the divine, and I know from the divine manifestations, I know what time it is. So he says, so why do you have a clock on your desk? So he said, because you can't be upstairs all the time. In other words, you got to be down here on earth as well. Okay? But like tonight is Rosh Chodesh, right? So every month, and by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, there's a book called The 12 Dimensions of Israel by Nechama Nedborny. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And see, so you think that there's 12 months in the year because that's the cycle, right? There are 12 months in the year. But why are there 12 months in the year? So there are 12 permutations of the divine name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. There's 12 possible permutations, okay? And that means to say that every month has a different permutation right behind you in the Veda. So do we know? Yeah, that's good.
Musaf, right?
Yeah, Musaf Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Wow.
So it's right to it.
He opened it up right to the page. Okay. But you see over here, every month is a different permutation of the divine name. You're amazing. Okay. So okay. That means to say that there are, in other words, this whole world, right? The Baal Shem Tov explained, right? So as you know, in the Torah it says, God said, "Let there be," and so let there be light, and there was light. Let there be a firmament, and there was a firmament, right? So there's a verse in Tehillim that says, so how was the world created? The world was created by divine speech. Baal Shem Tov explains the verse in Tehillim that says, "L'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim," that your words are forever present in heaven, as meaning to say that God is continuously speaking the words of creation, and that's why the world is in existence. If God were to stop speaking those words of creation, everything would revert back to nothingness as it was before creation. There wouldn't even be any dust. There would be nothing. Okay. So in other words, there's a system, okay, and part of that system is that the divine letters of the 4 letters of the divine name, being that they have 12 different permutations, that's why we have 12 months. Each month is the divine energy is coming down into the world in somewhat of a different way. Okay. Now, if you want to really study more about this, so Nechama Nedborny's book is a very good way to begin. Okay. Nadborny, Nadborny. And so in other words, so we live in this world and we try to understand from this world what's happening in a higher realm. But it's the higher realm that manifests itself into the world that we know, that we live in. So we can try to figure out some things about the higher realm from our knowledge of this world, okay? But those who are fortunate enough to be able to be conscious on that higher level, so they see it from that perspective. You understand? So when he tells the story about the visioner seeing the world of the 6 days of the week, making space for the world of Shabbos, for him this is literally so. Okay? We don't see it, but it's important to know that there was a tzaddik who could see that. Okay, when the Alter Rebbe was in prison, okay, he was in isolation for a lot of the time, but he knew when it was day and when it was night. He knew what time of day it was, and there was this minister of education of the Tsar that would come in and question him and interview him. And he noticed that Dr. Rebbe knew what time of day it is. And he asked him, like, how do you know? And his answer was similar. He knows from what's happening in heaven that it must be this time now on earth. Okay? We don't see it. But it's good to know that that's the way it is. Okay? Not that this explains it, right? But you are aware that different animals have certain sensitivities, right? Everybody knows that. Dogs sense an earthquake before it happens, right? And different animals have different sensitivities, and it's something that you can observe, right? So there's information in the world that most of us don't know how to access it, but it's there. Okay. I have a friend, Zev, who, I don't know if you ever met him, he's a phenomenal drummer. He doesn't use an instrument to tune his drums. He actually listens to the sound of the universe each day, and that's how he tunes his drums. Have you met him? You'll meet him one day. Okay? Can you hear the sound of the universe? I can't, but it's there. When my friend Zev says that's what he does, I know that that's what he does. He's not pulling the wool over my eyes. Okay? And there's a teaching in the Zohar that I came across in one of Rabbi Gleiber's books that says that all the motion in the universe is generated by music. And that this music is so extraordinary that we don't get to hear it, because if we would hear it, our souls would leave our bodies. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff out there that the Kabbalah speaks about, that modern science is just beginning to understand. Okay. Good.
There's two words that come to mind. One you used a couple of times, that sensitivity. That in order to understand what you've been teaching us and what you've been reading, it requires understanding that it's possible to have very great sensitivity to all of the risks, that we encounter. And the other word, which I haven't heard you use yet, but I was thinking of also before, and that was wonder, sense of wonder that comes across in the very, very beginning of this chapter. Olam Shalom Ukach Yafeh, the world is so beautiful, continuous sense of wonder that because that people tend to take things for granted, and nothing can be taken for granted. Really.
Right.
An idea of maintaining a sense of wonder.
That everything is a miracle every moment.
And that's even a non-tzaddik can acquire that ability.
Right. Right. Okay, L'chu Neranena. So now he's going to go through the 7 Psalms that we recite on Friday night for Kabbalat Shabbat. Okay? So Rav Shlomo says, this is from these are transcripts from the tapes. Okay? Shabbat Shalom, Good Shabbos, Heilige Shabbos, Holy Shabbos. Achim Yikarim, Kol HaShavua, Ulai Anachnu Lo Kemo Melachim, all week long we're not like kings, אבל כשבאה Shabbat מתוקה והקדושה, but when the holy sweet Shabbos arrives, as כל יהודי, כל אחד פתאום נהיה למלך. Every Jew all of a sudden becomes like a king. And if you haven't had a chance yet, take a walk in Reish Harim on Friday night, and you'll see that like everybody's just dressed like kings and queens, and like Ramashev, it's like a whole different world. So everybody all of a sudden becomes like a king. I can remember Shlomo telling the story about this taxi driver that he met, and who had become about Shuvah, and he told him that one Shabbos morning he was sitting with a client in his car, and he's at a red light, and he sees this Haredi guy with a bunch of his kids coming towards him, and he's thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to scream at me? But as they came up towards the car, like the guy gave him such a beautiful good Shabbos, and then he thought to himself, look at this. He's walking in the street like royalty. He's with his kids. My kids, I don't know where they are right now, and which mall they're running around, or which beach they're running on, and whatever it is. And I'm working on Shabbos just to make a few extra bucks. I can have this beautiful royal day every week. Why do I have to go crazy running around for all the physical things in this world which I don't get to enjoy anyway? And he decided that's it. He stopped driving on Shabbos. Shabbos is going to shul, taking his kids with him, and he's going to have a day with the family, So when Shabbos comes, it's like every Yid, and in a certain sense, just a very, very down-to-earth sense, the fact that none of us are allowed to work on Shabbos means to say that, let's say I work in your factory on Shabbos, 6 days a week, you're my boss, but not on Shabbos. You're not allowed to work, and I'm not allowed to work. They're trying to pass along the Knesset now to make sure that no businesses are open on Shabbos. And there are people in the Knesset who are threatening that they're going to bring down the government if they do that. And there are many non-religious Jews who are in favor of that law, because they say that if you're going to allow businesses to operate 7 days a week, there's going to be a whole sector of society that's not going to have a single day off during the week. Because who's going to end up working on Shabbos is the people that want to make some more money, right? And these people, they're just not going to have a day off. They're going to end up working 7 days a week. But that's just from a worldly perspective, but the real important reason is that this is a Jewish country, and like in any country in the world, there is an official day off, so we should have an official day off like Shabbos, which we do, but they need to tighten up the law. But the point is that that Shabbos is so special, right? And that if you allow yourself to receive Shabbos, like all of a sudden you're like royalty. A friend of mine had his oifruf at the great synagogue in Tel Aviv a number of years ago, about 15, 16 years ago. And so we went for Shabbos, and they had a chazan from Australia that was in town for that Shabbos, and they were doing Kabbalat Shabbat with Shlomo and with the choir. And you could see like this is like a modern Orthodox type of community, like Kippah Struga, and the people were coming in to daven, and you could see that their office was still with them. Like they left the office, but the office didn't leave them yet, right? By the time the chazan finished the first psalm, by the time he finished the Chuni Ranina, he looked around like there was no more office. Everybody was like, like Shabbos. You can literally see it, Okay? So we say, אנחנו, end of the third line, אנחנו מקדמים את פני השבת כמו שיוצאים לקראת מלך ומלכה שבאים. We go to greet Shabbos just like you go to greet a king and a queen. כל השבוע אנחנו מחכים לשבת. All week long we're waiting for Shabbos. וכשהיא באה יוצאים לקראתה ואומרים לכו נרננה להשם. Come, let us sing, let us dance for God. אתם יודעים שכל מזמור של קבלת שבת מתקן יום אחד בשבוע. So every one of the 7 psalms is basically fixing one day of the week. לכו נרננה מתקן את יום ראשון. לכו נרננה is fixing the first day of the week. Okay, so if you remember, maybe we'll look at it tomorrow. We'll look at the mizmorim inside as we do each one of these mizmorim. But if you remember, so it starts right, and it starts off like very beautifully, and then in the middle of the mizmor, it starts off like let's go greet Shabbos, etc., etc. And then it says all of a sudden, Im Shana Akud Bido. For 40 years, I was having this. How do you translate Akud Bido? Sort of wrestling in a certain sense, but we were 40 years in the desert, right? And I said, these people are like, really going in the wrong direction, and they don't know my ways. So, and I swore that I would not bring them into Israel. And it's a very stark contrast, Here we are, we're already started welcoming Shabbos, and all of a sudden, King David mentions the 40 years in the desert. So all I want to share right now is that going into Shabbos is similar to going into Eretz Yisrael. Okay? And just like going into Eretz Yisrael, we had to be ready to receive the land of Israel. Okay? We had to be ready to receive the gift that Hashem was giving us. In the way that he was giving it to us. Okay? Without saying, is this good enough? Is that good enough? Right? We have to receive Shabbat. So at the end of this mizmor is sort of like saying, we're going into Shabbat. Leave your preconditions behind. Leave your assumptions and your preconditions behind, Because if you don't, you're going to still be in the desert. You're not going to be in Shabbos. Okay. So that's the important point from today, is Kabbalat Shabbat, is that it's all about receiving Shabbos. Okay? And when you're receiving something, you got to be ready to receive it. Okay, we continue tomorrow, God willing.
Will you be talking about how to receive tomorrow?